Dozens of cultists were pitched backwards by the Space Marines' first volley, blood bright on their robes. More died as the bolters fired again. Kellen exploded from cover, a laser blast scoring a groove in his shoulder plate. The first cultist to bar his path died without even seeing the blow that killed him. The next saw Kellen bearing down on him, and the Marine sergeant relished the look of terror on his face. His power fist took his head off. Gunfire sounded, louder than before, as more covering fire raked the robed cultists. Kellen fought and killed his way towards the temple doors, gore spattering his armor bright red. All around him, Squad Lutra killed with a grim efficiency. Short dashes for cover combined with deadly accurate bolter fire had brought them to within 80 meters of the temple doors with no casualties. In their wake, more than 200 cultists lay dead or dying. Powerful blasts of gunfire spat from the smashed windows. Too heavy to charge through, even for power armor, Kellen knew. He activated his Voxcom, Brother Lucius. Yes, Brother Sergeant, you have a good throwing arm on you. You think you can get a couple of grenades through those windows? Lucius risked a quick glance over the rim of the fountain he was using for cover and nodded curtly. Yes, Brother Sergeant. I believe I can, the lion willing. Then do so, ordered Kellen. The Emperor guide your aim. Kellen shifted position and spoke to the rest of his squad. Be ready. We move on the grenade's detonation. Each tiny rune on his visor that represented one of his men blinked once as they acknowledged receipt of the order. Kellen glanced round to check that Chaplain Boreas was ready too. The hulking figure of the chaplain was methodically examining the dead cultists, pulling back their robes like a common looter. Kellen's lip curled in distaste before he quickly reprimanded himself for such disloyalty. But what was the chaplain doing, Brother Chaplain? Called Kellen. Boreas looked up, his helmeted face betraying nothing of his intent. We are ready, Kellen finished. Brother Sergeant, began Boreas, moving to squat beside Kellen. When we find this prophet, we must not kill him. I wish him taken alive, but our orders are to kill him. Your orders have been changed, Sergeant, hissed the chaplain, his voice like cold flint. I want him alive, you understand? Yes, Brother Chaplain, I shall relay your orders. We must expect heavy resistance within the temple. I will tell you now that I do not expect many, if any, of your men to survive, advised Boreas, his voice laden with the promise of death. Why did you not brief me on this earlier? Snapped Kellen. If the forces we are to face are so strong, then we should hold here for now and call in support. No, stated Boreas. We do this alone or we die in the attempt. His voice brooked no disagreement, and Kellen suddenly understood that there was more at stake with this mission than simple assassination. Regardless of the chaplain's true agenda, Kellen was duty-bound to obey. He nodded. As you wish, Chaplain. He opened the Voxcom to Lucius again. Now, Brother Lucius. Lucius stood, lithe as a jungle cat, and powered a frag grenade through each of the windows either side of the cathedral doors. No sooner had the last grenade left his hand than the heavy blast of a last cannon disintegrated his torso. The heat of the laser blast flashed his superoxygenated blood to a stinking red steam, twin thumps of detonation and screams. Flashing light and smoke poured from the cathedral windows like black tears. Now, yelled Kellen, and the Marines rose from cover and sprinted towards the giant bronze doors. Scattered small arms fire impacted on their armor, but the Space Marines paid no heed. To get inside was the only imperative. Kellen saw Brother Marius falter, a lucky shot blasting a chunk of armor and flesh from his upper thigh, staining the dark green of his armor bright red. Chaplain Boreas grabbed Marius as he staggered and dragged him on. Kellen's powerful legs covered the distance to the temple in seconds, and he flattened his back into the marble of the cathedral wall. Automatically, he snapped off a pair of grenades from his belt and hurled them through the smoking windows. The shockwave of detonation shook the cathedral doors, and he vaulted through the shattered window frame, snapping shots left and right from his bolt pistol. Inside was a blackened hell of smoke, blood and cooked flesh. Bodies lay sprawled, limbs torn off, skeletons pulverized and organs melted. The wounded gunners shrieked horribly. Kellen felt no pity for them. They were heretics and had betrayed the Emperor. They deserved a death 100 times worse. The Dark Angels poured inside, moving into defensive positions, clearing the room and dispatching the wounded. The vestibule was secure, but Kellen's instincts told him that it wouldn't remain that way for long. Marius propped himself up against the walls. The bleeding had already stopped, the wound already sealed. He would fight on. Kellen knew. It took more than a shattered pelvis to stop a Dark Angel. We have to keep moving, he snapped. Movement meant life. Chaplain Boreas nodded, reloading his pistol and turned to face Kellen's squad. Brothers, he began. We are now in the fight of our lives. Within this desecrated temple you shall see such sights as you have. Against them, as if in answer to his thoughts, a studded timber door at the end of the cloister burst open and a mob of screaming warriors charged towards them. Kellen's jaw hung open in disgust at the sight of the enemy. They were clad in dark green mockeries of power armor, an abominable mirror of the Space Marine's glory. Crude copies of the Dark Angel's chapter symbol, spread wings with a dagger through the center, adorned their shoulder plates, and Kellen felt a terrible rage build in him at this heresy. The Marines of Squad Lutra screamed their battle cry and surged forward to tear these blasphemers apart and punish them for such effrontery. To mock the Dark Angels was to invite savage and terrible retribution. Fueled by righteous anger, Squad Lutra fought with savage skill. Blood, death and screams filled the air. As the foes met in the center of the cloister, the hidden guns opened fire again. A storm of bullets and ricochets, cracked armor and smoke engulfed the combatants, striking Space Marines and their foes indiscriminately. A shell tore downwards through the side of Kellen's helmet. Redness, pain and metallic stink filled his senses, driving him to his knees. He gasped and hit the release catch of his ruined helmet, wrenching it clear. The bullet had torn a bloody furrow in the side of his head and blasted the back of the helmet clear. But he was alive. The Emperor and the Lion had spared him. A booted foot thundered into the side of his head. He rolled, lashing out with his power fist, and a cultist fell screaming, his leg destroyed below the knee. He pushed himself to his feet and lashed out again, blood splashing his face as another foe died. Kellen sprinted for the cover of the cloister, realizing they had been lured out of cover by the fraudulent Dark Angels. He cursed his lack of detachment, angrily wiping sticky redness from his eyes. The tactical situation was clear. They could not go back the way they had come. To reach the main vestibule was not an option. The gunfire would shred them before they got halfway. The only option was onwards, and Kellen had a gnawing suspicion that their enemies knew this and were channeling them towards something even more fearsome. Boreas shouted his name over the stuttering blasts of shooting, indicating the timber door the armored cultists had emerged from. I believe we have only one way out of this. Forwards. Sergeant. Kellen nodded, his face grim as the icon representing Brother Christos winked out. Another Space Marine dead for this mission. But Kellen knew that they would all lay down their lives for the mission, no matter what it was. Chaplain Boreas had decided that it was worth all of them dying to achieve it, and that was good enough for him. Under cover of the cloisters, Boreas and the remaining 5 members of Squad Lutra sprinted through the studded door that led out of this fire trap. Sergeant Kellen just hoped that they weren't running into something worse, never witnessed in your darkest nightmares. Degradation and heresy now make their home in our beloved Emperor's vastness, and you must shield your souls against it. Boreas lifted his chaplain's symbol of office, the Crozius Arcanum, high. The blood-red gem at its center sparkled like a miniature ruby sun. Remember our Primarch, and the Lion shall watch over you. Kellen muttered a brief prayer to the Emperor, and they pressed on. They are within your sanctuary, my lord, said Casta, worrying plain in every syllable. What would you have us do to destroy them? Nothing more than you are already, Casta. Are you sure, lord? I do not doubt your wisdom, but they are the Adeptus Astartes. They will not give up easily, I know. I am counting on it. Do you trust me, Casta? Absolutely, lord. Without question. Then trust me now. I shall permit the Angel of Blades to kill all the Marines, but I want their chaplain. It will be as you say, lord, replied Casta, turning to leave. The prophet nodded and rose from his prayers to his full, towering height. He turned quickly, exposing a sliver of dark green beneath his voluminous robes. And Casta ... single quotes he hissed, I want him alive. Chaplain Boreas swung the Crozius in a brutal arc, crushing bone and brain. Fighting their way along a reliquary-studded cloister, the Marines battled against more followers of the prophet. The Dark Angels fought in pairs, each warrior protecting the other's back. Kellen fought alongside Boreas, chopping and firing. The slide on the bolt pistol racked back empty. He slammed the butt of the pistol across his opponent's neck, shattering his spine. Boreas slew his foes with a deadly grace, ducking, kicking and stabbing. The true genius of a warrior was to create space, to flow between the blades where skill and instinct merged in lethal harmony. Enemy weapons sailed past him and Cullen knew that Boreas was a warrior born. Cullen felt as clumsy as a new recruit next to the exquisite skill of the interrogator chaplain. Brother Marius fell, a power maul smashing into his injured hip. Hands held him down and an axe split his skull in two. Yet even though his head had been destroyed, he shot his killer dead. Then it was over. The last heretic fell. His blood spilt across the tiled floor. As Cullen slammed a new magazine into his pistol, Boreas knelt beside the corpse of Brother Marius and intoned the prayer for the fallen. You will be avenged, brother. Your sacrifice has brought us closer to expunging the darkness of the past. I thank you for it. Cullen frowned. What did the chaplain mean by that? Boreas stood and pulled out a data slate, displaying the floor plans of the cathedral. While the chaplain confirmed their location, Cullen surveyed his surroundings in more detail. The walls were dressed stone, fine carvings hacked off and replaced with crude etchings depicting worlds destroyed, angels on fire and a recurring motif of a broken sword and a dying lion. The rendering was crude, but the origins of the imagery was unmistakable. What is this place? He asked aloud. This is our chapter's history on these walls. Lion L. Johnson, Dead Caliban. The heretics daubed their halls with mockeries of our past. He turned to Boreas. Why? Boreas looked up from the data slate. Before he could answer, roaring gunfire hammered through the cloisters. Brother Cain and Brother Guias fell, heavy caliber shells tearing through their breastplates and exploding within their chest cavities. Brother Septimus staggered, most of his shoulder torn away by a glancing hit, his arm hanging by gory threads of bone and sinew. He fired back with his good arm until another shot took his head off. Cullen snapped off a flurry of shots, diving into the cover of a fluted pillar. The concealed guns were pinning them in position and it would only be a matter of time until more cultists were sent.